Have you ever seen those graphs that depict the amount of time we spend with different people over the course of our lives? Our family and friends, well, we spend the most time with them early on in life, with the most time we spend with our friends peaking at age 18. This time is eventually consumed by our partner, our children, and last and also least, our coworkers. There's something about having life plotted on a graph like this that makes me cherish the most memorable moments in life. Those carefree days of hanging out with your high school friends during the summer, or that time you met your first love and swore she was the one. Even though those times aren't that distant for me, it still puts things into perspective. Each period of life you go through is so precious in its own way. And just look at how much a person's time is impacted by the existence of a child. The graph is a sharp rise and drop, like a fun roller coaster ride, which I think might actually be a good metaphor for what it's like to be a parent. Parents, feel free to weigh in on that. Yet out of all of these people who we love so much, the only one we never stop spending more and more time with is ourselves. You see, time confines almost every relationship to its peaks and valleys, its ebbs and flows. The natural progressions of this life pulls us away and pushes us towards certain people at different times. This happens whether we like it or not. Father Time continues to win. Though when it comes to ourselves, time grows alongside us. Getting older means we should expect to become more alone with each passing day. You see, I've spent my young life trying to understand loneliness. Why I acted in certain ways or did certain things to avoid it. Why I tried to borrow other people's love so I could escape it. Maybe it's because I grew up as an only child to a single mother. Loneliness was a figure present early on in my life. I used to associate it with a negative emotion, almost a source of pain in certain moments. In many ways, I did not understand the full scope of what loneliness was and how it could seep into who I was as a person. But what I love about reflecting and looking back at life is that we get to think about ideas and concepts in new ways. I know this has to be something that everyone out there goes through, something that we all deal with in our own ways. As I'm getting older and encountering it more often, I'm choosing to view loneliness less as a negative or a positive. Now I see it more as a symptom. What do I mean by a symptom? I'm starting to think that loneliness is a symptom of an incomplete relationship with oneself. It's a result of some sort of inadequacy with effort, attention, care, love, required for oneself above all others and all else. Put simply, if we were content with ourselves, would we just be alone and not lonely? What does that look like? To me, part of it's that feeling of not waiting on anybody. Going to check out that new place in town on your own, or booking that trip as a solo trip. It's that feeling of believing in yourself the way a family member or best friend would, ultimately becoming the best friend to yourself. I believe that as we continue to spend more time alone like a skill, it becomes easier, like a muscle, it will grow. It becomes easier to find ways to combat loneliness and to do it in healthy and meaningful ways. Rather than seeking those quick dopamine hits to distract us from it, our time can be spent discovering what truly fulfills us. Getting lost in something where you couldn't care less about anybody or anything else in that moment. Because ultimately, to make the most of this life, we must understand what kinds of people, what kinds of places, and what kinds of habits serve us the most. It's really quite beautiful being able to acknowledge something that feels so powerful and consuming at times. In this age of being isolated behind screens, I know it's something a lot of us feel but don't express. It's uncomfortable to even think about. That's why it's so easy to turn to all the distractions. Yet the more we occupy our time with things that don't serve us, the harder it is for us to overcome its power. Instead, we can use loneliness to our advantage. Let it be that static force within a rapidly changing life. Let it be a reminder for the impermanence of our time here. Let that be the reason we live out the life we know we deserve. And as we coast along on the unpredictable seas of life, one day it will be our time to sail off into the sunset. Doing so by ourselves.